Don't miss these life-changing truths from Pastor Adam Burton's latest sermon at Central Baptist Church.
Mom's been home all day with 3 loud kids. It's been 12 straight hours of breaking up fights and wiping up spilled juice. The second her husband walks through the front door, she grabs her keys and darts out of the house. Going to Kroger is her only way to get 30 minutes of quiet. She's just wandering the aisles, taking her time. But right as she turns down the cereal aisle, she spots a woman from church standing by her cart. She knows this woman's story. Her husband died a few months ago. She's still struggling. Immediately, the mom's mind races. I'm too tired for this. If you have your Bibles, open them to Genesis chapter 18. We're moving week by week through the life of Abraham, and this morning the story opens on a day when the sun is just beating down. The text calls it the heat of the day. Centuries before Abraham's day, back at the very beginning of the human story, God walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. That was a gentle breeze. It felt like a total comfort and peace. But today at the Oaks of Mamre, the conditions are blistering. The heat is suffocating, the dirt sticking to everything. So let's look at what happens when the living God decides to show up at the exact moment an old man has absolutely nothing left to give. Read with me, Genesis 18, verses 1 through 5. And the Lord appeared to him by the Oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So they said, Do as you have said. It happens right after a brutal day at work. You pull into your driveway with a fried mind and a body that's in pure survival mode. But instead of getting out, you just sit there in the quiet car with the engine running. Scrolling through your phone feels easier than walking through your front door, so you stall for time. Right as you're trying to build up the strength to move, you look up and you see your neighbor walking down the driveway, heading straight for your window. What's your immediate gut reaction? Your stomach drops. A little voice inside your head begs them just to please keep walking because you don't have it in you today. The truth is, a lot of us live our lives behind rolled up windows. We don't necessarily dislike people, but the sheer weight of daily life leaves us with absolutely no margin. People install video doorbells now on their porches to screen out the knock on the door. Or you put in the earbuds in at the grocery store to send a clear signal that I don't want to be bothered today. Time is treated like private property. And when someone unexpectedly needs us without warning, it feels like a nuisance that we just have to manage. That's our trouble. We protect our convenience, and we treat people as a frustrating interruption. We like our routines, and we work hard to protect our free time. And when someone unexpectedly needs our help, we see them as frustration. We just want to be left alone. But God tends to do His best work right in the middle of those exact interruptions. And that brings us to a blistering hot afternoon, thousands of years ago, where a 99-year-old man sitting in the shade of his tent is about to have his quiet day completely disrupted. His response is going to show us what happens when we stop choosing what is convenient and let God interrupt our lives. you're following along in your bulletins, our first point is lower the drawbridge. Now look back with me at the first two verses of our text, and let's see how Moses describes the scene. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth. It's noon. The desert sun is brutal. At this hour, the air is dead still. Nobody is moving. Everyone is hiding deep in the shade just to survive the heat. But Abraham isn't sleeping. He's sitting right at the opening of his tent, looking across the blinding dirt. The second he spots 3 dusty travelers, he moves. Abraham's 99 years old, but he doesn't stay in the shade and just hope they keep walking. He gets up on his tired legs and runs straight into the heat. Look closely at the page. Look at how Abraham lowers his drawbridge. He doesn't walk. The text says he runs. Moses stacks up these action verbs right here in verse 2 to show us the urgency driving this old man. He lifted up his eyes, he ran from the tent door, and he bowed himself to the earth. Abraham hurries, he runs, he bows his face directly in the dirt, and he begs these strangers to let him wash their feet. Now, he has no idea who these men are. We get a heading in our Bibles telling us it's the Lord, but Abraham doesn't know that yet. There's no glowing halo or voice from heaven saying, be on the lookout. He just sees 3 ordinary travelers covered in desert grime. If Abraham acted like most of us do today, well, he would have stayed in his chair. He had every excuse. He was 99 years old, and running out into the suffocating heat was the last thing an elderly man should be doing. He could have quietly stepped back into the dark interior of his tent and protected his comfort. Instead, he lowers his drawbridge of his life, and he runs straight toward the people who need help. Mom's been home all day with 3 loud kids. It's been 12 straight hours of breaking up fights and wiping up spilled juice. The second her husband walks through the front door, she grabs her keys and darts out of the house. Going to Kroger is her only way to get 30 minutes of quiet. She's just wandering the aisles, taking her time. But right as she turns down the cereal aisle, she spots a woman from church standing by her cart. She knows this woman's story. Her husband died a few months ago, and she's still struggling. Immediately, the mom's mind races. I'm too tired for this. If I stop, I know this is going to be a heavy conversation, and I'm just too tired to listen right now. All I want is to be left alone. Everything in her wants to turn the cart around and pretend that she didn't see her. But God does His best works when we're completely inconvenienced. We want a booming voice from heaven or a volunteer sheet that's passed around on a Sunday morning. But God usually shows up on a Friday afternoon when you feel like you have absolutely nothing left. And He puts someone who needs you right in your path. When you face those moments this week, when you see that widow at the store or a coworker knocks on your office door because they're facing a life-altering decision, your first reaction will probably be dread. You're going to look at your watch and look at your email inbox and all the messages, and you're going to tell yourself, I just don't have time for this today. And in that exact moment, you have a choice. You can turn the cart around. You can duck down the next aisle. And you can protect your schedule. Or you can look at that person and realize that God is inviting you into what he is doing. Lower your drawbridge and step into the mess. Our second point is empty your hands. Once the travelers agree to stay, look at how Abraham responds. Let's read verses 6 through 8 together. And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. Abraham tells his guests that he'll fetch a morsel of bread to refresh them. But what he delivers is entirely different. He runs back into the tent and tells Sarah to quickly bake bread using 3 seahs of fine flour. This is an enormous amount of food for 3 people. To put it in perspective, later in the Bible, a woman named Abigail uses 5 seahs of flour to feed David's entire army of 600 soldiers. Abraham demands more than half of that ration for just 3 dusty travelers. This is the open-handed generosity of a man who knows what it means to be blessed. Baking in the desert heat, it's not like turning on the dial on an electric stove either. Sarah had to grind that grain by hand and build a roaring fire in the middle of a 100-degree afternoon. And then Abraham runs out to the herd himself. He doesn't grab the cheap goat, which is all basic hospitality require. He picks the choice calf. That is an expensive meal that takes hours to prepare. He sets it out with the curds and milk, and then he just stands under the tree, serving them while they eat. This is what it looks like to be completely open-handed. Abraham's not trying to buy a miracle. The pagan cultures around him, they would throw massive feasts to bribe the gods, hoping to get a child or a good harvest in return. But Abraham has no hidden agenda. He doesn't even know he's feeding the Lord yet. He isn't trying to earn God's favor. He's just serving out of a heart that knows it has already been blessed. Now, we usually prefer our generosity to be convenient. We want to help people, but we want to keep a safe distance. Right? If a family is going through a crisis, we'll gladly sign up for the meal train. But then we pull up to their house and we leave the casserole on the front porch and we text them from the driveway. We really do want to help. We just don't want to get pulled into a long, hard conversation. Or we'll send money online or send them a gift card. We want the good deed, but we don't want it to ruin our afternoon schedule. But the gospel generosity doesn't ask what is the easiest. When you realize your standing with God is a free gift you could never earn, that Jesus completely settled your account on the cross, your hands naturally open up. You stop asking what the bare minimum is, and you start pouring out what you have for those in front of you. You give up your afternoon, and you empty your hands, because you know everything you have is already a gift from the King. Our final point is come out of the shadows. The scene now shifts away from the glaring midday sun into the quiet, dim interior of the tent. Let's read verses 9 through 15 together. They said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "Well, she is in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? The Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. He said, no, but you did laugh. Sarah is standing out of sight, concealed by the heavy fabric of the tent, listening to the conversation that's happening out in the dirt. And suddenly the visitor makes an incredible promise. He says that he will return next year and Sarah will have a son. Now Moses makes sure that we understand the biology here. He tells us they're old and that Sarah is way past childbearing age. Natural conception is impossible. So when Sarah hears this through the tent wall, she laughs to herself. This isn't a joyful giggle. It's a bitter, cynical scoff. When you've looked at an empty nursery for decades, you stop hoping because you simply can't afford another heartbreak. Her laugh is completely silent. She didn't say a single word out loud, but the visitor sitting outside in the dirt reads her private thoughts right through the canvas wall. The Lord asks Abraham, why Sarah laughed? And he asks if anything is too hard for the Lord. That word means beyond human capability. God is telling Sarah her worn out body is not an obstacle to his promise. But Sarah panics. When you realize the living God caught you, you panic. She steps out from the shadows and blurts out a lie, claiming she didn't laugh. Now, it's a ridiculous thing to say to a God who just proved he can read her thoughts right through the tent wall. But she says it anyway, throwing up a flimsy excuse just to survive the sheer terror of being fully exposed. Teenager creeps through the back door an hour after curfew. He has his shoes in his hands. He's trying to slip quietly down the hallway. Suddenly the lamp clicks on in a dark living room. His dad's sitting there with his arms crossed, looking down at his watch. The teenager goes pale. Blood roars to his ears, glowing red. Before his brain can even process a logical thought, he blurts out a ridiculous excuse, saying he thought that the dad meant 11 a.m., not 11 p.m. being his curfew. Now, both of them know it's a complete lie. It won't hold up to 2 seconds of scrutiny, but he says it anyway just to survive the panic of being caught. That's exactly what we do with God. When our secret doubts or failures are brought into the light, we panic. We put on a brave face and we stammer out a transparent excuse and try to hide. We do it because we're terrified that if God sees the raw truth of our unbelief, that he will abandon us. But look at how the Lord responds to Sarah's cover-up. He doesn't scream at her. He just looks through the excuse and places a firm definitive into the conversation, saying, no, but you did laugh. Why does God end the scene on that word laugh? He isn't shaming her. He's dropping a hint. Months from now, when that baby boy is finally placed into Sarah's arms, God tells him to give him a specific name, Isaac. Do you know what the name Isaac means? It means he laughs. God didn't expose Sarah's cynical laugh to destroy her. He exposed it because he was about to turn her deepest doubt into the greatest joy. He took the bitter inside the tent scoff of an exhausted old woman and he transformed it into the joyous laughter of a promised son. That's how God deals with us. God's promises are not anchored in the perfection of our faith. They're anchored in the strength of His grace. And when God brings our secret doubts or our cover-ups into the light, He isn't doing it to shame us or to kick us out of the family. He already knows the absolute worst thing about you. He knows the secret scoffs that we muttered in the dark and the lies that we've told out of fear. And He decides to keep His covenant with you anyway through the blood of Jesus. You don't have to hide. God doesn't call out our cover-ups to destroy us. He calls them out to pull us out of the shadows and invite us into the life He promised us. I'll invite our worship team to come. When you walk out of these doors in a moment, you're going to find 100 plausible reasons to keep to yourself. You'll be tempted to view people who need help as a frustrating interruption to your schedule. And when someone needs you, your first instinct will be to point to your own life and start listing your excuses. I'm too tired. I don't feel well today. My time's limited. I've got my own mess to deal with. I'll just do the bare minimum. Do not believe that lie. A couple of months ago, a tornado came through our town. Woke up that Thursday morning and looked on Facebook. I saw that one of our church families out on Maple Leaf had took a pretty hard hit. Thank God they were okay, but their house and yard were a complete disaster. Put word out to the church that they needed help. Now, it killed me that I couldn't go out there and clear brush because that was the week I was down in my back, and I knew Jess would kill me if I tried picking up a tree limb. But she and the kids hopped in the van and headed over there to get to work. At lunchtime, I picked up a bunch of pizzas and drinks, and I pulled into the driveway. I was amazed at what I saw. The damage was pretty bad. But that's not what amazed me. I saw a crew of men and women from our church with work gloves on, chainsaws going, tools, cutting up a tree, dragging limbs, and slowly making progress. There was another church group in the backyard doing the exact same thing. And as it was getting later in the afternoon, the yard looked 10 times better, but it still wasn't finished. But right across the street was a neighbor whose house had also suffered damage. Many of our crew picked up their tools and walked over there to get to work. Jess had texted me asking me to get her a drink, so I went to the store and I couldn't believe what I saw when I came back to that neighbor's house. Right in the middle of everyone was Ellie, busy dragging limbs to a pile. Most of you know Ellie. God changed her life last year. I had the privilege of baptizing her right in these waters. She rarely misses a Sunday. But what you may not know is that Ellie and Cameron had just closed on that house 2 weeks before the storm hit. Her own house was a mess. Windows broken out, debris everywhere, parts of the roof are missing. She had a mountain of work waiting for her right across the road. Ellie had every legitimate excuse in the book to keep her drawbridge up and to stay in her own yard. She could have easily said, I'm exhausted. My own house is damaged. My time is limited. I need to take care of my own family first. No one in this room would have blamed her for saying that. Instead of clutching her time, she emptied her hands. She crossed the road and stepped out of the shadows of her own messy problems to serve a neighbor. Church, that's what this sermon is all about. We love to use our limitations as an exemption card. We'll tell ourselves that because we've worked so hard and are tired or busy or dealing with our own messy problems, that we shouldn't have to serve anyone else. But being hindered doesn't mean we get to turn inward. Ellie didn't do it because she's better than anyone else. She didn't do it to get her name spoken from this stage. She did it because when you know Jesus has already secured your life and He has settled your account, you don't have to live in self-preservation mode anymore. You stop clutching your time and your comfort like private property and you start giving them away. That's what it looks like when people stop guarding their own comfort, and on an infinitely greater scale. It's exactly what God did for us. Because we were the ones who were stranded in our mess. We were broken by our sin with absolutely no way to fix our own lives. But Jesus did not stay in the comfort of heaven. He lowered the drawbridge and He stepped right into the dirt of our world. He went to the cross to pay the penalty for your sin, and He rose from the grave to offer you a brand new life. If you're sitting in this room today and you have never placed your trust in Jesus, you don't have to clean yourself up. You don't have to put on a performance. No, He already knows the absolute worst thing about you. And He loves you enough to save you today. Just a moment, we're going to sing one final song. If you want to give your life to Christ, if you just need someone to pray with you over a heavy burden, don't wait. I'll be standing right down front as we sing. Come step out of the shadows. If you're not ready to step out today, hey, I want to give you another way to respond. Pull out the connection card in your bulletin. Look on that tear off tab. Give me your information. Jot down, I want to be saved, or I want to join the Central family. I want to be baptized. I have something I need to be prayed over. Fill it out. Give it to me as I stand at the back door. I'll slip it into my Bible. Nobody else will know. Be between us. But regardless, find a way to respond. I'm Pastor Adam Burton from Central Baptist Church. I want to personally thank you for watching our sermon today. It means so much to us that you've taken time to connect with God's Word through our ministry. If this message encouraged you, I invite you to explore more about our church at cbcmaysville.com. You'll find resources, upcoming events, and ways to get involved. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for more content like this. We'd love to stay connected with you and to continue to grow together in faith. Thanks again for watching. God bless you, and I hope to see you soon, either online or in person.